This House is in session. Minutes for the meeting held on Friday, 17th January 2025 to be deferred. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
Questions that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Questions? Report from select committees. First reading of bills. Statements by ministers. Congratulatory and obituary speeches. Personal explanations. Motions for leave of absence. Oral replies to questions. Notice of motion for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance. Orders of the day.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
The question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 11, in the name of the Honourable Attorney General, to move the passing of a resolution to adopt the report of the Joint Select Committee standing on the social sector and the environment on the Health Services Amendment Bill 2024 and the proposed Health Services Nuisances Regulations 2024.
Honourable Member St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, this debate on the resolution to adopt the report of the Select Committee standing on the social sector and the environment, on the Health Services Amendment Bill and the proposed Health Services Nuisances Regulations is an example of a parliamentary process that I believe is much improved over previous ways of doing the business of Parliament. And at the outset, I'd like, therefore, to thank the chairman, the chairperson of the committee, the member for St. George North, and all of the other committee members who served, including one of the opposition senators, who I am told made a very robust and intellectually sound contribution in the deliberations of this committee. I hope his leader thanks him, but I certainly want to thank him for being willing and so generously participating in the deliberations of the committee. And I want to thank him too for his unanimous support of the work of the committee by appending his signature to the end of the report as a signal of his approval. Mr. Speaker, this committee met on several occasions, but I'd like to point out that they first invited 38 entities to participate in its hearings. The hearings were public, they were broadcast on social media, streamed live, and it is a clear example, Mr. Speaker, of how this administration deals with matters of public concern. I hope that all members of the public appreciate the opportunity to weigh in on this health services regulations and whether they in fact weighed in or not. Mr. Speaker, the fact that the Parliament of Barbados made itself available through this select standing committee to receive contributions, to receive constructive proposals, is government in action and government that is truly participatory. Mr. Speaker, this is not a matter that I expect would engage the chamber for too long this morning, but it is still important for me to outline the report. The chairman is here. I hope that she doesn't mind if I say a few things about the essence of the report. But other members of the committee are here, and I will leave them to do as they wish in that regard. I'd like to say, Mr. Speaker, that the report itself contains a number of excellent proposals made by Barbadians who are keenly in support of the protection of our environment. There are some people, Mr. Speaker, who seem to believe that the environment doesn't matter. We still have Barbadians who litter in a way that is really disgraceful. One of a site that I saw in Bathsheba only on Sunday was litter all over the place. And while this regulation and this amendment is not intended to deal with that, I simply want to make the point, Mr. Speaker, that while a government does its part in ensuring that our country is clean, there's an obligation on every single citizen of Barbados to keep public spaces clean by not littering, but also to keep their environs clean. And that perhaps is a good jumping point, Mr. Speaker, for the presentation of this report. Because this report is an examination of the scheme that the government wants to put in place to ensure that Barbadians keep premises that are under their responsibility in a clean manner. Now, some bright person will ask, well, what does clean mean? Well, Mr. Speaker, somebody famously said it is difficult to define terrorism, but when you see it, you know it. We may not be able to define clean in a way that would fit in, that would be accommodated easily in one of our legal dictionaries. But this legislation, this regulation attempts to establish a scheme which sets, insofar as it is possible, certain standards approved by the health services people, approved by the public health officers, because they were worked on with their support, so as to give Barbadians something to measure their surroundings by. Yes, to some extent, there are some things that we will consider to be arbitrary. The regulations propose a specific, let me cite it for you, Mr. Speaker. The regulations propose certain specific things, but the point is, so for example, it says that it is a general nuisance if grass, bush, or weeds exceed 2 feet in height. One person who participated in the committee hearings, not a member of the committee, said that it should be 5 feet. No, 5 feet is real tall. There are people in this chamber who there are people in this chamber who are a little bit diminutive and would find it hard to wade through anything that is 5 feet tall. Happily, the grass and bush in Christchurch South is kept relatively low, and that would not present a problem. That would not present a problem for certain people. But the point is, sir, it is difficult to set numerical standards for some things because there will always be some debate. Somebody will feel that 2 feet is too tall. There were positions advanced that we should stick to 6 or 8 inches. That would serve the purpose of reducing all of Barbados to a huge lawn and might in itself create environmental difficulties, but equally, setting it at 5 feet is probably too far east. So yes, we appreciate the contributions of those environmentalists. We appreciate, Mr. Speaker, that everyone does not have and will not have the necessary means to be able to address all of the issues in these regulations. But Mr. Speaker, what is certain is that we cannot adopt a stance of doing nothing simply because we cannot agree on the minutiae. There will always be a debate on some elements, but the point is, the important thing is that we have set standards. These standards have had the input of the agencies of government that are responsible for dealing with them. And when once these regulations are made, consequent upon the passing of the amendment bill, Mr. Speaker, we hope that Barbadians will begin to comply. Now, we've already debated this bill in this chamber, and therefore there is little point in engaging in a repetition of the points that were made on that previous occasion. And in fact, I suspect that that might be to put us in breach of the standing orders. But I will say, Mr. Speaker, that the amendments which were agreed by the committee to be made to the bill, which really is the key thing, is to delete the definition of minister. In the legislation, in the health services legislation, Mr. Speaker, minister was defined as being the minister responsible for health. Long ago, Mr. Speaker, we stopped the legislative practice of defining minister as being a minister responsible for a particular subject matter. The reason is obvious, Mr. Speaker. There are only 2 statutory ministers in our Constitution, a Minister of Finance and an Attorney General. But over the years since we've had cabinet government as an independent country, portfolios change and departments are moved from ministry to ministry. In my own short political career, I remember the days when when sanitation was under the Ministry of Health. Water was under the Ministry of Health. We didn't always have a ministry responsible for the environment, so anything that was responsible that had environmental issues connected to it was with the Ministry of Health. But our country has become more sophisticated. Our model of governance has changed somewhat. We recognize the importance of having perhaps a microscopic approach on other parts of governance and other portfolios, and therefore new ministries have been created. In the short time since we came to government, we had the police service being under the Ministry of Home Affairs, and then it moved to the Attorney General. There was a time when the Attorney General was also the minister responsible for Home Affairs. And AG's past, certainly when I was AG, I had responsibility for the post office, had responsibility for fire, had responsibility for the prison, the police, a whole set of things. So the point is, Mr. Speaker, that for good and sensible reason, we have stopped defining minister as having a particular portfolio responsibility and simply relying on the provision which says minister means the person under whom a particular portfolio is assigned. Because under the Health Services Act, minister meant Minister of Health. But the Environmental Protection Department, which will have the day-to-day responsibility of addressing some, if not all, of these matters, because everything wouldn't be under EPD. They had some discomfort, and people did advance the situation that you had the Minister of Health, while not having portfolio responsibility for environmental protection, having the legal capacity or the legal authority to overreach into a department for whom he does not have responsibility. Now, I'm happy to say, Mr. Speaker, that in the last 6 years, we've had no such issue. The last 7 years, we've had no such issue. Our departments have been able to work seamlessly. We didn't have ministers butting their heads against each other. But in order to ensure that there is no technical difficulty, it made sense, Mr. Speaker, to change the definition of minister, to delete the definition of minister, where it says minister means responsibility for the ministry for health. That is the change made to the bill. Now, Mr. Speaker, we have adopted, in this instance, what I consider to be a novel but important practice. Because strictly speaking, the Select Committee should have looked at that which was before it. In other words, the amendments to the Health Services Bill was the subject matter of what was before the Select Committee, because that is the bill, that is what went to Select Committee, that is what was laid in Parliament. But, Mr. Speaker, we must never become so hidebound and rigid in our approaches that we avoid or ought not to do the sensible thing. The only reason we were amending the Health Services Act was to be able to facilitate the making of new regulations. We had to do the amendment to the Act first, which will then allow the minister, it will give him the legal authority to make the regulations. Those regulations, therefore, have not yet been made. But it was a counsel of prudence for us not to go to a Select Committee with just a bald amendment, but instead to present to the public of Barbados the proposal that we intend to put in place as regulations. Now, Mr. Speaker, we could have said, no, we ain't discussing that. We're only discussing the amendments to the bill. But, Mr. Speaker, more important than the amendment to the bill would be the actual regulation which will come into force and create new obligations on the public of Barbados. So while strictly speaking, a purist might argue that never ought to have formed the subject of the deliberations, a practical person would argue, but it should form the subject matter of the deliberations. Because we have to get to what is it that is going to be affecting how Barbadians live and work and play and move. Not the amendment to the bill, but the health services regulation that we are bringing now to replace the one that we had since the 1960s. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, that on the last occasion I spoke, I referred to the fact that we were still in the area of using terms that have long fallen out of use. So things like night soil. I mean, I have a feeling that if I ask any member of this chamber, what is night soil, they would be wondering, night soil? They're saying that is grow at night, or that is planted at night. I see the member for the city looking a little puzzled. But the point I'm making is that in the 1960s, when the regulations were first put in place, you had a different Barbados. You had a very different Barbados. You had different concepts. You had different health issues. You had different kinds of nuisances. Yes, you had to deal with the poor, the potty, the chamber pot, whatever you want to call it. I grew up in that generation. And we had them. We had them. But Barbados has changed significantly, and it was important for us to change the regulations, to modernize them, and in as much as we were going to present a substantially different scheme, it was important to put it before the people. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the methodology that we use for enforcement of public conduct, and perhaps continue to use too much, is by dragging people before the court, resulting in backlog, public servants having to, there's a case I'm aware of which has been adjourned repeatedly, and the individuals from the health, who are dealing with the health services regulations have gone to court like 12 or 15 times. Every time they go to court, the offender and his attorney, adjournment. You're wasting public officers' time by going up to court repeatedly. And of course, I understand why the accused person would want to resist getting a conviction, because the conviction will criminalize him or her. So that's why we've said, let's do away with that and let's have a system of an administrative fine. You're not calling somebody a criminal because they got empty paint skillets at the house gathering mosquitoes. That is not criminal conduct. An environmentalist might want to hang you for it, but that is not a person. That is often more neglect than an individual who decides that they can just keep these things here to harbor mosquitoes, as we say. So what we needed to present to the public through this particular report, through this particular committee process, was the new method of dealing with it, and that is by putting administrative penalties in place. And, Mr. Speaker, some individuals came to the committee and they said, I don't like this, I don't like that. The time is too long. The fines are too high. But I am very proud of the opposition senator who I understand made the point. I understand, and the member for St. George North complimented him in a very fond way. It worries me. Perhaps that's the explanation. Complimented him for being perspicacious enough to recognize that the hardship provision in the regulations were such that he was able to represent that that those provisions can take care of instances where the fines are perceived to be a problem, or the individual is not able to address the particular issue. So that we now have a number of preemptive amendments to the regulations. We really can't call them amendments because, again, the regulations are not in place, but there are recommendations for ways in which the regulations can be improved before they're made. Mr. Speaker, I am so proud of this Parliament for having introduced these standing select committees. I'm proud to be a part of an administration that recognizes that, especially in circumstances where you have a supermajority in Parliament, it is even more important to go to the public through the committee process and allow the public to have a say. We've never tried to push anything down the throats of this Parliament, nor have we tried to push anything down the throats of the electorate. The only amendments to be made in this chamber today will be the amendments to be made to the bill. That's the only amendment before us. But I'm happy to say that the amendments that are proposed for the regulations, I believe the minister will certainly take note of them and be more than willing to see to it that these proposals these proposed amendments to the regulations are put in place. I salute the members of the committee for working on this bill and regulations in the way in which they did. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that it allows us now to move to a stage where we can pass the amendment, and the minister will in very short order be able to lay these regulations in Parliament. Mr. Speaker, the health services regulations are many, and we're not allowed to engage in anticipatory debates, but suffice it to say that in the same way that we've looked at this regulation, which dates back to the 1960s, manpower permitting, I believe that the Ministry of Health will find itself in a place where it will want to review many of these regulations that are now so old and in some respects outdated. So with those words, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this resolution do now pass.
Honourable for Christchurch South.
I'm much obliged to you, Your Honor. I'm also obliged to the learned Attorney General for the manner in which he seeks to conduct this debate, short as it will be. And on behalf of the senator to whom he referred, that is Senator Worrell, I convey to him, to the learned Attorney General, gratitude for the description of Senator Worrell. He described him as robust and intellectually sound. And I don't think the learned Attorney General did that to in any way influence or shorten my speech. May I speak, sir? May I speak? Thank you, sir. I began by making reference to the manner in which the learned Attorney General conducted this debate, and I did not once observe any bad manners from any of the members, certainly from myself or on the other side. Let us continue in that spirit. And let me again say that in describing Senator Worrell as robust and intellectually sound, the learned Attorney General would not have been attempting to influence the length nor the content of my speech if he were doing it to distinguish the senator from the other members of the committee. Well, he has the opportunity to get up and say whether in praising him there was some subtle contradistinction between the qualities of Senator Worrell and those with whom he sat, certainly the 5 government members. And they're all here at this debate, and they will want to speak for themselves as to their own intellectual prowess. But again, I say that Senator Worrell fits in with the other members of his party, certainly in terms of those qualities and virtues extolled by the learned Attorney General, and we say thank you. The debate has been light-hearted, and we're grateful for that. I think while I was making some notes here, I heard a reference to tall grass and grass being 5 feet, and that some of us would get lost in grass 5 feet high. So it's good to engage. It's good to engage a light-hearted debate and to avoid bad manners. And that is how we will proceed today, the avoidance of bad manners. And a reference to physical prowess and physical stature would be noted. And the learned Attorney General will want to add that a white beard and an inordinately large head is not evidence of any intellectual prowess. So that adds to the lightheartedness, of the debate. We on this side can also be lighthearted. Now, Your Honor, I will remain faithful to procedure. I will not repeat anything that I said during the debate proper, and I will restrict myself in a fairly short address to what comes here today. That is the report. And that is the procedure to which I will remain faithful. And without exhausting myself on all of the submissions made, I congratulate this committee for having the industry to go into the public domain on a matter. I can't describe this matter as grave and weighty. The Attorney General did pause to speak with some authority on definitions of night soil and other household implements. This is now a matter that engages the attention of a serious parliament, and we must abide it. This is a matter that, by his own admission, by the learned Attorney General's own admission, engages the attention of the Honourable Member for St. George North, and that her energies have now been expended in this important work, the work dealing with tall grass and overgrown lots. How exciting are these times? And that work, that very hard work, results in this 31-page report, and the country is grateful. The country must be very grateful. But I want to, without looking at every submission made by the public, as a lawyer, sir, and you are as well, we come with our own, I suppose, professional biases. I would want to focus on two of those submissions made. I don't like to call names in here, but I won't do it. I would just refer to the report that was submitted, the submission, I beg your pardon, that was submitted presumably on behalf of the bar, and another report by another lawyer, and that lawyer is known for expertise in environmental law. And Your Honor, maybe I will restrict myself, as a lawyer myself, of some experience, to those reports. And I note that both lawyers repeated and supported what I had submitted when I spoke on the legislation that came to the House. I had questioned the wisdom and indeed the legal propriety of attaching a cleaning bill to a land tax bill. I had questioned the propriety of that, and I still do so. And I'm pleased that certainly at committee stage, while the Honourable Member for St. George North was engaging her energies, that that Honourable Member took submissions from two lawyers who supported my position, that you really ought not to be attaching cleaning bills to a land tax bill. And lawyers do think like lawyers, and they do think not only of the law, but they think of justice. And the possible injustice would arise if one considers that the Land Tax Department, BRA now I suppose, has the legal authority to ultimately penalize a delinquent payer of land tax by offering for sale his property. And that is a very severe recourse, that if you don't pay your land tax bills and the amounts reach, I suppose, proportions that fall within the discretion of the Commissioner of Land Tax, now the head of BRA, that head of the BRA may exercise that discretion and say, look, this bill is too high, I'm going to sell your land. Now recognize, Your Honor, that that bill may become inflated by delinquent charges or payments that are delinquent because of cleaning, so that a land tax bill that used to be $10,000 for non-payment of the land tax bill can be inflated by non-payment of a cleaning bill, and therefore move the commissioner or the head of BRA to swifter action to sell the land. And one does not want that. One does not want to alarm a land tax commissioner when one is dealing with non-payment of bills for land tax by adding to that delinquency a delinquency for failure to clean lots that are 5 feet or of grass or whatever. So that I think the two lawyers who submitted thought like lawyers. And I confess to you, sir, that perhaps that is all I am. All I am is a lawyer. And that is how I think too. Beg your pardon, sir. So that, without repeating what I said in the debate, I am happy that the good lawyers came and supported my earlier position. But that is not to be immodest. That is just to indicate to you, sir, that good lawyers think alike. Now, a few hours ago, we came to this Parliament and debated a very comprehensive piece of legislation on disabilities. And if this government, if this Parliament is in the mood for bringing to this place comprehensive pieces of legislation, now is the time to consider a comprehensive piece of legislation on matters of the environment. And the government may want to do this to justify its claim that it is one of the leading voices in this region and perhaps in the world on matters of the environment. If you're talking climate change and the hazards of climate change, certainly that is a debate that marries itself to the environment and preserving the environment and employing government's favorite word. No debate passes in here. Perhaps you'll hear later today, resilience. No debate in here ends unless the word resilience is used. That is the government's favorite word these days. Perhaps they will, when it becomes a cliche, they may want to sit and redefine it for the sake of a public that loses its admiration for the overuse of that word resilience. But let us come back to the debate proper and ask the government, based on this report, it's not earth-shattering. I don't wish to diminish the efforts of the Honourable Member for St. George North, so that in the event that the Learned Attorney General is turning and saying to her that this is some groundbreaking work and that this alters the state of life in Paradise, it does not. This is a simple matter. There are more matters of greater moment. And if the government wishes to invite greater moment, let the government do what the government did a few hours ago in passing comprehensive disabilities legislation. The time is here to pass comprehensive legislation dealing with the environment. I know the government had promised to embrace 1 million trees a few years ago. The boast was made in here that they were going to embrace 1 million trees. How much you at? You're at 600,000. The honourable member says that he is at 600,000. I don't know where those trees are gathering or where they have scattered across this country. Those terms have great meaning now in Barbados. The gathering of trees and the scattering of trees. The government will decide whether those trees are gathered or whether they're scattered. But if the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central insists that he has planted 1 million trees, well, he will want to start counting for the sake of the people of Barbados. But I'm sure that when comprehensive legislation on the environment comes, his handprint would be lifted from the effort. His fingerprint, I beg your pardon. And of course, when this comprehensive legislation comes, and if it comes, and it has to come, if this government is serious about climate change and so on, the efforts of the EPD, the Environmental Protection Department, will be engaged, and we will understand that the environment is not only a matter of public health officers peering into large drums looking for mosquito larvae, but that it is a far more serious undertaking needed to be done. So I ask the government to look at more comprehensive legislation. We are finding as an opposition that the government is asking us to help them more and more. And they're not even doing it in any abashed way. The government is coming here, in here and elsewhere, and asking the opposition. They're pleading for help. And we are helping them only for the sake of this country. We are not helping them for their own sake. We will help you. We will help you. And please don't allow the Honourable Member for St. George North to be boastful about this little effort when there is a far larger mandate to pass comprehensive legislation and to let the people of this country know that the environment is important in a country that's very untidy. In a country that's very untidy, we have millions of dollars being spent. We have millions of dollars being spent while the Honourable Member for St. Lucie takes his seat. This is an opportune time to say that. We have millions of dollars being spent in St. Lucie to entertain 120 people who were told not to wear red shirts so that they wouldn't be identified as members of the Barbados Labour Party. So much money was spent in St. Lucie for people to jump up and down 2 weekends ago, or was it last weekend? And let some of those resources go towards cleaning this environment. You can't drive through a street now and find that it is tidy. So that a government that clearly has access to lots of money needs to understand how to allocate those resources. And revelry cannot be important as tidiness. And this is a very untidy country. We are on the issue of the environment and the fitness of that environment for human habitation. And if this government exercises its judgment to spend taxpayers' money for 148 people to jump up and down in St. Lucie 2 weekends ago, well, fine. That may be the exercise of the government's discretion, but please spend some of that money on the environment. Clean the streets. Going to Bayland, for example, going to Britain's Hill, I'm not saying that the soldiers who walk through the pine should have weed whackers with them, but allocate the resources towards cleaning this country. Yeah, I didn't expect the soldiers to have weed whackers, but send some people from NCC, employ some of them, and when the soldiers walk through the pine, let them walk behind the soldiers and clean the streets in the pine for the young people who live there, who occupy that domestic space. Now, with all that, the Attorney General has said, the learned Attorney General has said that he is proud of Senator Worrell. So are we. Also proud of Senator Worrell, and for the reasons that the learned Attorney General confessed, that he is robust and intellectually sound. Why do you think he is where he is? He is there, he is there, he is there because he is robust and intellectually sound. And I repeat, if that praise was heaped upon him to distinguish him from the other 5 government members of that committee, Senator Worrell accepts it. Senator Worrell accepts it. So that, in coming to conclusion, Your Honor, I will reflect now on the recommendations. The recommendations after 6 weeks of this very hard work. You know, I'm tired of the self-congratulation. And I will find a light-hearted way to say it. And a boast was made in here a few weeks ago, I have 29, so I don't have to come in here. Well, look, I'm tired of the self-congratulation. And the people in Barbados are entitled to be tired of the self-congratulation. And if after 6 weeks, If after 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever, this is what the government has come to us with, fine, we accept it. We accept that Senator Worrell distinguishes himself from the rest of the members for his robustness, his intellectual robustness and soundness of intellect. But here, let the public hear now what are the recommendations in this very important report. Let the public hear, let the public judge. I am not here. Senator Worrell doesn't need the flattery. He doesn't need those compliments. And I will not be coming here today to exchange any compliments with this government. Let the people of Barbados now hear what are the recommendations. Beg your pardon, sir. In this report, all three of them. The committee hereby makes the following recommendations. There is a need for some public education through the use of the Government Information Service and community sessions whereby the first principles of cleanliness is next to godliness, which we learn as we grow up, would be enforced and thriven to continue putting it into practice. The report itself confesses that it draws on the experience of a 5 or 6 year old child going to school at Eden Lodge Primary School. They used to hear that every day. Cleanliness is next to godliness. So we have come all the way into adulthood to a select committee to be taken back to Eden Lodge Primary School where those children are well taught that cleanliness is next to godliness. And this forms the first recommendation in the report. What amazing, what earth-shattering, what groundbreaking work has been done here. And that is why Senator Worrell is set apart for a robust and sound intellect. He signed it. He is not in disagreement with it, but he will want to join in congratulating the government for going back to first principles, and literally first principles that the children at Eden Lodge Primary School are taught when they go to that institution. Cleanliness is next to godliness. And it gets more profound because it is saying that that public education should come through the Government Information Service. Now, there may be some embarrassment in here because the Government Information Service has been, you're a labor lawyer, sir, and there's the concept of layoff, short time, or dismissal. There's some department now called, some public education department that has been foisted on the people of this country. Why did not this report seek to engage the services of the public education department, which seems, now, the Government Information Service, and I'm dwelling on the report, the Government Information Service spent many years representing and reflecting the work of the government. A government goes on some kind of program, whether it is road repair, much needed, except that they forgot that St. Thomas exists. And the Government Information Service used to tell the public what the government is doing in a very dispassionate way, so that one would not have accused the Government Information Service of propaganda. But the people in Barbados are now curious as to why we have paid for our Government Information Service for many years and still create another department called Public Affairs, or I think that's the name, with its abundance of consultants, of course. If we have the Government Information Service, as recommended by this report, why is there a need for an arm that is probably intended to do the same work as the Government Information Service? And if it were intended to do the same work as the Government Information Service, it would be mentioned here. But the report makes no reference to the Public Affairs Department because there's government's own recognition that the mandate of the Public Affairs Department is qualitatively different. Is it propaganda? That is a question that the government may wish to answer today or some other day, or they can choose not to answer. But we are not being confrontational today. We are conducting this debate in a very light-hearted fashion. And we recognize that Senator Worrell, in his intellectual and robustness, did attach his signature because precisely, he supports it. And so do I. And so do I. We ain't done it yet, though. So that before we finish, don't beg for mercy so loudly, Attorney General. Before we finish, we will ask why the Public Affairs Department was not engaged on this one. Why not? I'm dealing with the report, sir, and I'm dealing with the recommendations of the report. Now, is it that there is selective treatment of GIS with an outstanding record of service in this country? And are we dealing selectively with public affairs, and the people of this country are yet to have a clear definition as to the mandate of public affairs? We, of course, ask, is it propaganda? Why isn't it mentioned here? This certainly is a matter of public affairs. This certainly is a matter in which they sit the minister down in a very comfortable chair, bowl long hops at him and he or she, and they do what all good batsmen, even bad batsmen, know how to hit a long hop. That's what public affairs does. They take long hops and they hit them hard and long and high, so that while they're employing government information service, perhaps public affairs, as we say in labor law, will be laid off, put on short time, or dismissed, if they're up generally to no political good. The people of Barbados, as this report does, would want them dismissed. If it is a propaganda arm of the government, it needs to be dismissed. Propaganda is not a politically pleasant activity. We come now to the second recommendation in this groundbreaking work, and no pun is intended, groundbreaking. Number 2, there must be a continuous public relations campaign going forward for each land and property owner who possesses ownership rights. They also have to be looking after properties for family members, etc., and must be responsible and serious about their surroundings and environs. A balance must therefore be struck not only between the welfare and hardship of those who are owners, but the welfare and hardship of occupiers who also have the responsibility to curb their behaviors. We certainly feel that this is a matter, and the report doesn't mention it, but if the government needs help, here we are. Here we are. Just ask us, we're going to help you. And even on this matter, we are going to help the government. That the problem of overgrown lots involve the legal rights of the delinquent owner and the collective interests of his neighbors. And as lawyers, one will ask the question as to which ranks with priority. Is the collective interest prior or paramount over the legal right of an owner to own his property and to dispose of that property in the manner that he thinks fit? Now, all right-thinking people believe that it is wrong for an owner to keep a property in a state of disrepair because it injures the collective interests. And one will therefore rationally, as Democrats, take the position that the collective interest ranks over what that delinquent owner may feel to be his legal rights. It is his property, and he may say, look, I can do as I wish with this property. No, you cannot, because there is a collective interest at stake. This would be of particular appeal to the learned Attorney General. It would be a breeding ground for vermin and mosquitoes. The learned Attorney General elevated his discussion to one on a long discussion on night soil. So if that is the expertise of the learned Attorney General, we will accommodate him now and say to him that on the question of night soils, we believe that the individual landowner should not believe that he has the right, because it is his land, and because he's entitled to use his land as he sees fit, subjective use, subjective consideration, that he must bend or he must defer to the collective interest. And therefore, it is that collective interest that will always give justification to these initiatives. Again, we support it. We support any initiative that ranks the collective interest over individual rights insofar as cleanliness. And this report takes us back to primary school and reminds us that cleanliness is next to godliness. So the honourable member, any honourable members who have a primary school in their constituency can take this report to them and tell them, look, your parliament is now saying what your kindergarten teacher told you on the first or second day of school. How groundbreaking is this entire exercise? And I want to applaud the government for reaching its level of expertise and taking us back to first principles. That is as much as I wish to say as to the second recommendation. It certainly is consistent with a position that we have taken in a legal context. Permit me to read that last sentence again. A balance must therefore be struck not only between the welfare and the hardship of those who are owners, but the welfare and hardship of occupiers who also have the responsibility to curb their behaviors. Sincerely beg your pardon, sir. And in closing, I will come to the last of these recommendations. And number 3 is, as a consequence of the robust discussions, the committee recognized that the EPD, which is governed by Chapter 44 of the laws of Barbados, is devoid of a proper piece of legislation vesting them with the necessary powers of enforcement. Therefore, for the avoidance of conflict, EPD should be governed by its own piece of legislation. And that codifies and that restates my earlier position that those whose ministries are concerned in this activity must now seek to emulate another ministry which came here a few weeks ago and to a crowded public gallery passed comprehensive legislation for persons who suffer disability. Now is the time. Now is the time. In an era when we are talking climate change to affect the social climate in this country, which is itself affected by an environment which is very, very, very poorly looked after by the government and its agencies, and to pass comprehensive legislation, and to, not in passing that comprehensive legislation, give power to the Environmental Protection Department. It is a department that concerns itself, I think, with deep scientific matters, pollution, the causes of pollution, and the attempts, and the necessary attempt to curb pollution. That's a very important department, and it does not reside in the consciousness of Barbadians from day to day. They hear the letters EPD, they don't care what it means, but that is a department that really is in a position to determine the future of this country in a very real sense, to determine the health, the environmental health of the country, and the environmental health of the country must include the health of its citizens, because too many people, when they say they love Barbados, they're talking about the beaches and the million trees that will appear at some point. But when we say those of us who genuinely love Barbados, we mean that we love the people. So that one again supports the recommendation that there should be some comprehensive legislation, except that we add that that comprehensive legislation should go beyond the mandate of the EPD and involve the public health officers whose numbers remain depleted. We asked this government previously to please increase the number of public health officers if you claim, government, to be interested in the people of this country who are living in environments, who are living in neighborhoods that are falling into bad health practices. And a government, again, that claims to be interested in the environment and in climate change and all the changes that will make people's lives better. Please augment that department with some more public health officers and make Barbados a clean and healthy place. Pick up the garbage, please. Not 3 and 4 weeks should pass by and you cannot get a garbage collection. If you claim that you're interested in people, that you love people, you really can't neglect them for a month without a garbage collection. So that I have accused this government previously of being a leading manufacturer of pretty talk. And I said in a previous debate that the word used to be sustainable. We moved from sustainable to resilience. That was the word of 2024. We were greeted with a Christmas gift, and I heard some speeches, and the new word was the ecosystem. Everything now is the ecosystem. So we've moved from sustainability to resilience, and we're all invited now, whether in social or physical or scientific activity, to be a part of the ecosystem. Again, the sale of pretty words. We are tired of the sale of pretty words. Nobody's buying them anymore. Start doing some serious work. Start doing some work that deals with the first principles of the activity. This is nothing earth-breaking, earth-shattering, I beg your pardon. This is simple work. This is very simple. So that, being so simple, the Learned Attorney General and I will now join in confessing that there's no need for any lengthy debate on this. I think the Learned Attorney General honored that position by speaking for less than 15 minutes. And why should I go beyond 15 minutes, except that I'm obligated to let the people of this country know what is going on, to let the people of this country know what the government considers important or unimportant. And if the government considers environmental issues or environmentalism important, let the government come back, revisit this place with comprehensive legislation that deals with the environment. No promise to plant 1 million trees is enough. I don't know where they're planting them, if Archers Bay or up by the stadium. I don't know, but I want to reflect what the minister said in here today as part of his environmental trust. If he doesn't say it on his feet, I'm going to say it on his behalf to the people of Barbados, that having promised that that the Honourable Minister was going to plant 1 million trees, is claiming today that he has now planted 600,000 of those trees. We don't know if they've reached 5 feet, as the Learned Attorney General hopes that they have. We don't know if they're saplings or whether they're now mature trees that can be climbed to see the stage that costs $300,000 to be erected at Archers Bay, the taxpayers' money. So that we don't know where those trees are, we don't know where they are, but the Honourable Minister who has told this country today that there are 600,000 trees.
Honourable member, the minister cannot have spoken because he didn't catch my eye, sir. So he did not speak to the public. For your information,
Yes.
Honourable member.
Yes, he has the chance to speak. But while I was on my feet, I heard a voice, and it wasn't the voice of God. It was the voice of mankind. And mankind was here telling me, wherever it came from, Your Honor, was here telling me that in the effort to plant 1 million trees, that voice was telling me that they're not 600,000. So I'm happy to hear that Archers Bay now has more trees and that the botanical gardens have more trees so that the festivities, the revelry will probably be more pleasant, that people can now dance in the shade of the trees while the musicians play the sounds of freedom for this country. So, Your Honor, I will close by congratulating Senator Worrell, as did the learned Attorney General identify him exclusively, Senator Worrell, and we're happy. Senator Worrell is certainly very happy to accept the commendation. The learned Attorney General did not thank anyone else except the Honourable Member for St. George North, so that the learned Attorney General chose to exclude the other 4 government members who sat on that committee. The public will probably think that it is a chance to activate an otherwise inactive Honourable Member for St. George North. I have no difficulty in saying that. Dale Carnegie did not send me here. I came here to speak the truth. So that if I had to share this report with the public would wonder what this select committee did over 6 weeks. But we leave it at that. We don't want to be engaging in carping criticism of everything the government does. We don't wish to do that. But when the government is begging us for help, it would be very, very, it would be wrong for us not to reach out to a government that is pleading for help. It would be very wrong for us not to help the government. So we help the government through the presence of Senator Worrell on the committee. As I said, the learned Attorney General thanked him, and he identified him as the person on that committee, and I quote, who displayed an intellect that was robust and sound. I'm quoting the learned Attorney General. And we thank him for that commendation. We really do thank him for that commendation. And so, Your Honor, those would be the extent of my submissions. I note the members who signed off on the report. The Honourable Member for St. George North, the Honourable Member for St. Thomas, who can't get a road done in her constituency if she cries all through the night, the Honourable Member for St. Michael East, who...
Sir,
Honourable Member for Gracious.
I just wish to draw to the attention of the chamber that the Honourable Leader of Opposition is misleading this House. Sir, the most recent road done in Barbados was actually a road out by Vaucluse in the constituency of the Honourable Member for St. Thomas. I think Hyman's Hill is the name of it, and that was works preparatory to the execution of even greater road works. That was provided a diversion so the other works can be done. So I've ignored the barbs at other persons, but you know, that one, he can't misrepresent that for the people of St. Thomas. I don't know why he would even bother, because I don't believe that's necessary where he's looking, right? But he may also wish to point out that roads were done in St. John as well. And some are going to Christchurch South. So he has his field day. Thank you, sir.
Yes, that intervention only demonstrates that the Honourable Member for St. Thomas did cry throughout the night and get Vaucluse done. So the people of Vaucluse are grateful for the tears that
Honourable
you shed.
Member, you were speaking on the...
Yes, I'm
Please,
speaking on the
please
thing.
continue, please.
I don't know why they're going down that path.
Please.
And I was complimenting the members of this select committee. And I was coming to the Honourable Member for St. Michael East in his last days there by design. There's a political design that the Honourable Member for St. Michael East shan't be there for too much longer. And I would like to thank him, we all thank him, for the work that he has done with this committee. I see the Honourable Member for the city. This is the report before, so I don't know if you have it, sir. But the Honourable Member for the city, who occupies a separate building from that of the Attorney General, the learned Attorney General, I don't know if they had designed that he should occupy the same offices building as the learned Attorney General.
Honourable Member, you're speaking on the...
Yes, on the report.
Please.
On the report, yes, on the report.
Please.
So that we thank him as well. And I wish I could reach out and touch Senator John King. A few months ago, I used to be able to talk to him in here. He has attached his signature to this report, and happily, he is now absent from among us. Not voluntarily so, but he's absent. But we still want to thank him for attaching his signature and the contributions that he has made. He used to be a minister, he's now a mere consultant, but let us wrap up, sir. Let us wrap up. Let us wrap up now. Let us wrap up now on that, and let us congratulate this committee for this report. It could have been done. This could have been done in 2 mornings, but it took some 2 months. So there may be far more serious business ahead of us, and I look forward to that far more serious business. So something as trifling as this, why should I object? Why should I oppose it? There's no opposition to it, sir. I am obliged to you for your patience and your good grace today. Thank you very much, sir. And your good manners.
Honourable Member for St. George North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to start by thanking the Honourable Member for Christchurch South for making my task at the onset a little easier by identifying those members of the Joint Select Committee on the Social Sector and the Environment that examined this most recent bill before us, the amendments before us, and the regulations. I start by thanking him, Mr. Speaker, because at one point in time, I thought I was being sidelined for particular mention without reference to the fact that there were other honourable members, as the honourable member for St. Joseph indicated, who served well in contributing to the report we have before us. I was beginning to think it was because, like Senator Worrell, I am from St. John, and that particular area holds special interest for the honourable member, perhaps. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to suggest also that sometimes there is a misaligned perception of success, that to be successful, perhaps things have to be complex, perhaps they have to be groundbreaking, perhaps they have to be earth-shattering, and perhaps that in the simple things, today we still cannot observe some very important fundamental principles and lessons. And I'm happy, sir, that as chairman of the Joint Select Committee on Social and Environmental Issues, we were able to hear from a cross-section of people who were interested in responding to the fuller discussion of the issue. We were able to hear, if one would just read the transcripts, that notwithstanding that individuals were learned attorneys, some of the written proposals and the oral presentations, and notwithstanding, sir, that they were just mere ordinary citizens like myself, that individuals coming before the Joint Select Committee shared a perspective that a lot of what we had to be considering would have been unnecessary if the fundamental principles, those simple things, those simple lessons and mottos that we learned as children were adhered to by all citizens of this country, irrespective of their standing in this society. This committee's mandate, or the Joint Select Committee's mandate, included inquiring whether the provisions, the penalties imposed in the bill, and the proposed regulations as drafted were disproportionate or unreasonable in any way. The committee also had to consider whether the bill and the proposed regulations as drafted will be effective in the revision of the provisions concerning maintaining lands, and I'm reading the terms of reference, and buildings in a sanitary and safe state for the promotion and preservation of the health of the inhabitants of Barbados. The committee further examined whether the bill and the proposed regulations as drafted offer effective enforcement procedures to ensure compliance with the provisions of the bill. And the committee was also tasked with recommending changes, if deemed necessary, to the bill and proposed regulations as drafted for further consideration by the Chief Parliamentary Council, if deemed necessary. And finally, the committee was asked or mandated to report to the Honourable, the House of Assembly, on completion of the committee's deliberations 3 months from the deferral. And of course, given that Parliament at some point in time, the House was in recess, there was provision under the standing orders for that time frame to be expanded. So I start by outlining what the terms of reference for the committee were, because it's important for us to understand that when a bill goes before a committee, it's not necessary or necessarily the case that consequent upon all the examinations of written and oral proposals, that there may be a need for any recommendations to change what was put originally, what was laid in the House of Parliament, but that the committee's work would include carefully examining all submissions to see, not looking for things to add in, but we would examine all submissions to determine if there is a need for any further inclusions to strengthen what was previously put. As you heard the Honourable Member for St. Joseph make mention of, the committee, notwithstanding that a press release was sent out inviting the public of Barbados to respond if they so desired to any changes that they would wish to see included in the amendments, or to query or to criticize any elements. Notwithstanding that, there were some 40. The Honourable Member for St. Joseph said 38, but there were actually 40 agencies, individuals, organizations that the Joint Select Committee determined should be invited specially, just in case they didn't see the press release. We wanted to be sure that some critical areas had sight of the offer or the opportunity to come before the Joint Select Committee. And Mr. Speaker, sir, these included audit firms, the Barbados Agricultural Management Company, Barbados Agricultural Society, Barbados Egg and Poultry Producers, the National Trust, the National Heritage Department, the Red Cross, Coastal Zone Management, Chief Environmental Health Officer, the Water Authority, the Bajan Tree Planting Project, Drainage Division, Future Center Trust, sir, a wide cross-section of groups, so that we would have the opportunity for the widest possible consideration of the amendments before us. What the Honourable Member for St. Joseph did not make mention of was the fact that there were only 6 written submissions. Notwithstanding that it was put out to the public, and notwithstanding that specifically 40 interest groups, individuals, community groups, official and unofficial bodies were invited. 6 written submissions, and we entertained all 3 of the requests for oral submissions. And of those 3 oral submissions, 2 of them were actual written submissions, so included in the number of 6. So that just provides a context for what the committee was examining. And in a world where we are not truly democratic, and if we were to be going through the motions, yes, perhaps the work of the committee could be condensed into a few days, or a few hours, or a few minutes. But because that is not the basis upon which the joint select committees were established, but rather they were established to provide the public and those interested persons in discussing issues of critical importance to them and to this country the widest possible opportunity to examine their concerns. The committee's work spanned weeks, yes, but we spent a good few hours cumulatively examining carefully the submissions that we had before us. So the committee, among the considerations that were brought before it, considered whether the administrative penalty proposed was too harsh. And there was some discussion on that for matters that were previously raised here this morning, which I won't have to elaborate on. But in consideration of the penalty, one of the major issues that was highlighted, or concerns or flags raised, was around whether the daily $10 penalty, whether it wasn't excessive, but more so whether that penalty should kick in at the point of issuance of a notice of contravention or at the point of service of a notice of contravention. Also of consideration, and what took a lot of discussion, what we spent a lot of discussion around, was whether the time frame for clearing land was adequate. As proposed, it is 21 days. There were some suggestions that it should be 28 days, 30 days, 42 days. And some of the considerations in proposing the suggestions for a longer time frame surrounded the fact that there were instances that a property owner might not get the notice in time to respond within a 21-day period, or the fact that there were some property owners who might not have the financial means and capacity to respond within the 21-day time frame to a notice to clean their property, whether it's bush from the property or whether it's stuff dumped on the property. And that was a considerable amount of discussion, not only with the persons proposing altered time frames, but with the Ministry of Health and the Environmental Protection Department. Because we're conscious that form follows function. And what was the purpose really behind the amendments before this honorable chamber and before the committee? A large part of the consideration was the fact that it is driven by health concerns and public health concerns in particular. And I do recall the Ministry of Health pointing out in that meeting the time frame that it takes mosquitoes to breed. And if there is a concern with dengue fever or some other health situation that will be the result of mosquitoes getting into the atmosphere, just as an example, that the 21 days for which a property owner should have to clean is not intended to be punitive, but you're trying to arrest the issues that relate to health or that will undermine public health. And that remained the foremost concern. And we spent some time examining, therefore, if we want to be fair to property owners, then what are some of the provisions that will bring things into balance? For instance, there will be those property owners that live overseas, those property owners who may be ill or hospitalized at a time and may not be able to access the notice and so on. And so if we, or when we read through the regulations and the amendments, and when taken together, we see the opportunity for appeals to relief board, appeal to the court, and so on. And we spent some time discussing this particular system with the Bar Association in particular, who, having raised the concern, recognize the public health concerns that underpinned the time frames and spent more time, therefore trying to see how we would create a situation around appeals and so on that will give those exceptional cases where people would want to do better but could not do better the opportunity not to find themselves in breach and in penalty where the circumstances surrounding their failure to clear according to the time set in the notice was adequate. There was also a concern of whether the penalty should be, I said that already, whether the EPD, which remains governed by Cap 44, would be required to work under the Ministry of Health or the Ministry of the Environment. And I think that the Honourable Member for St. Joseph, in his introduction of the report, laid that out for us quite clearly, why you will not locate responsibility within a ministry per se, because EPD at one point has functioned directly on the health. EPD has also functioned under the Ministry of the Environment. But the EPD itself, when presenting to the committee and also acting as a technical expert for the discussions that were before us, the EPD recognized clearly its mandate. The Environmental Protection Department, Ministry of Environment and National Beautification is pleased to present its opinion, but it went on to make mention of the fact that it recognizes its mandate that a healthy environment and sustainably functioning ecosystem are essential for clean water and so on, and they recognize that the mandate of the department duties and responsibilities included regulation and control of development activities through building, direct lit buildings, vehicles, environmental agreements, multi-hazard management, hazardous materials, and so on and so on and so on. So the EPD itself recognizes that no matter where you locate us, the EPD recognizes what its mandate is. That is not to say that as we consider, though, the proposed amendments and the regulations, that there was not concern that there needed to be fuller consideration of the Health Services Act, and that there was not the recognized need for strengthening of the Act, especially as discussions emerged, Mr. Speaker, that did not relate directly to our remit or the terms of reference before us, but were nonetheless valid to improving the Health Services Act and also strengthening environmental management in the country. But what the committee recognized and concluded is what we find in many other instances as we look to improving legislation. Perfection is the enemy of the good. And if we wait oftentimes until we have everything that is perfect, we undermine some of the good things that need to be addressed in a shorter term. And so, Mr. Speaker, I was a little taken aback by the fact that the Honourable Member for Christchurch South was suddenly, seemingly opposed to an incremental approach and incremental steps being taken towards perfection, when perhaps in another place we would observe attempts to introduce things incrementally and by installment, as perfection, no doubt, is being contemplated and presumably being pursued. The Joint Select Committee was of the view that inasmuch as there were a lot of good things that were brought before the committee that could be introduced to strengthen health services management and environmental protection management in Barbados, the amendments before us did not provide the place. And conscious of the fact that there are other amendments being considered as we speak to the Health Services Act, and conscious further that there is a recommendation that's being worked on for enhancing environmental protection management, we felt it was okay to go ahead with the recommendations that related to what we had in our remit as we did. And so, as chair of the committee, who would have the opportunity here to speak on the report, I support every recommendation, all three of them that were brought, that are being brought before this honorable chamber and that are included in the report. In considering the recommendations as well, the committee was satisfied that property owners, once served with a contravention notice, would have sufficient time first and foremost to remedy the breach before finding themselves having to enter into penalty. And that was also a big consideration because, as we said before, there isn't every property owner that might be aware that there's a breach on his or her property. And we satisfied ourselves and the bar and others that came before us to engage us that the time frames in the end were not unreasonable given the broad, comprehensive view of things as unlike what was previously considered. But Mr. Speaker, I was very enlightened during the course of the examination of the amendments and the regulations by the Environmental Protection Department and their contribution to our consideration as we as a committee examine what was before us. And there were submissions too, if my memory serves me correctly, that sought for the broadening of the definition of nuisance so that the definition of nuisance would include such things as pesticides used in agriculture, or such that the definition could be broadened to things to include noxious gases. And as the regulations are not yet before us fully for debate, but the regulations are appended in the report. And when one examines the regulations specifically at section 3, 1, and 2, read in conjunction with the amendments to the Health Services Act, one recognizes that the definition given to nuisance is very broad and all-encompassing. And, sir, it is within that context that I introduce the final aspect to which I would want to speak to in this particular intervention. Because we fondly, well, not fondly, in a very abbreviated manner, many of us might refer to these amendments as amendments towards the Bush legislation, because there has been a lot of preoccupation with bush and overgrown grass, not only on our public roads, but on private properties. And many of us within this chamber would be very well aware that there are those ordinary members of the public who would be our constituents that will come from time to time appealing for intervention in getting properties cleared and so on. So that has been a large preoccupation. I myself, Mr. Speaker, as recently as yesterday would be getting a thank you, but you also get cursed because sometimes these things take time. They take time to address because the public resources available to assist, where they are available to assist, have so many different demands on them that it isn't always possible to satisfy constituents, members of the public, citizens of this country that are asking and begging for a little easement from the bushy areas that are not only a security threat to them, very often as they try to enter and exit their homes, but are home to mosquitoes and rats and other rodents and so on, that make it very difficult for a property owner to live in his or her own space that they themselves are keeping clean, but because another space is kept in the state that it is, that it becomes a nuisance to them and their family. There's some people that will, from time to time, clear vacant lots next to them where they live to alleviate some of these same threats to which I referred. But there are other people who cannot. So, to a large extent, the bush has preoccupied us. But as the Member of Parliament for the constituency of St. George North, this particular contribution or the particular interventions by the EPD were very enlightening, especially as that constituency continues to grapple with a nuisance occasioned by a dump in the constituency where garbage of all sorts had been collected over time, burnt, quarry and done, and although about 2 years ago, the government thought that they had broken the back of it. Indeed, I was in celebratory mood, Mr. Speaker, because at long last, the concerns for the residents surrounding the Lower Estate area were being addressed. That intervention proved very short-lived. And what we have, Mr. Speaker, is a situation where a public nuisance continues. We're dumping where permission was not properly provided for it and so on, was done, quarrying continued, and we have a situation where although you can't see the materials dumped, they continue to burn underneath the ground. And every few days, we can be bombarded with complaints from people of noxious gases, gases causing a public nuisance, people of the perception that it is contributing to their health concerns and so on. So I was very interested with how the EPD reiterated the fact that its recommendation was for noxious gases to be included, and so that although one would tend to focus so much on bush, that there is provision even in the included amendments and the supporting regulations for that situation at Lower State to be addressed. Not that we were ever in any doubt, but there is a clear legal basis for the situation to be addressed, if I can be so presumptuous as one who is not a learned attorney. And therefore, when one of the oral presenters, the Waste Haulers Association, came before the committee, I found their particular proposal very interesting because it was more in line with perhaps having government to support a proposal for waste haulers to be able to intervene and clear off lands that are overgrown and so on by way of alleviating the public nuisance of overgrown bush. But of course, the committee found that that was outside its remit. And so if the particular association was to propose similarly for alleviating the nuisance of the foul odors emanating from that dump, while it would be equally out of the remit, we would be concerned that they're finally ready to address it meaningfully in another place and in a way that was more fitting. So, Mr. Speaker, as I commend the recommendations before us and the changes that have been made to the report, we recognize that a lot of work still has to be done. And we are very conscious that a lot of work is in process to be done. And we are very conscious that outside of what is provided for or outside of the remit that we have before us, there is still a lot more that has to be done to ensure that citizens who are property owners, people living in this country, have the responsibility, but that responsibility, Mr. Speaker, should be seen within the context of the responsibility they have not only to themselves, to their countries, but to their neighbors who are also citizens of this country, to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. To observe that cleanliness is next to godliness. To observe that only the best is good enough, and that these foundation principles, if we hold on to them, because they're simple enough for all of us, any of us to understand, that if we hold fast to them, that we can contribute to making Barbados a cleaner and healthier existence to all of us. So I'm glad, Mr. Speaker, that this debate, though very important, is simple enough that all of us can contribute in a meaningful way, not only to the debate here within this honorable chamber, but to explaining it and giving life to it within our communities. And hopefully we will see where there are those deliberate attempts by some to circumvent their obligations, that we will see improvements in those areas, and that we would be able to address the public health concerns that underpin the need for the changes that have been brought before this honorable chamber. And with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I am obliged.
Honourable Member for St. Thomas. Honourable Member, is it on? Right.
the honorable member for St. Michael North gave way to me, and I'm extremely grateful. But I have funerals to attend this evening, and you know how it is with responsibilities for your constituents and other families. I want to add my few cents worth to this debate and to express my gratitude in congratulating the members of the committee and of course, the very distinguished members of other entities that were an integral part of forming this, the contents of this document to which we now refer. The assurances, the assistance, the great guidance on whatever else was offered, Mr. Speaker, really blessed my heart when I saw so many Barbadians send forward their concerns, their queries in writing and so on, to be able to make a contribution to the growth and development of this country. And I think that it is an excellent step forward in the history of Barbados for so many persons and groups to be able to come forward and to give their ideas and to identify ways in which we can improve the quality of our country in terms of the environment, how we get along with each other, the things we do that will impact on our growth and our development. And you know, sir, that we boast of a country that has some of the best tourism offers, and it is very true. And we would wish for not only the visitors among us to come and enjoy, but we wish for those who live here to feel safe in the various environments in which they live and work. There were two distinguished young Barbadian attorneys at law, sir, who were very helpful in guiding the select committee. And I really want to say many thanks to them as well, although it was said verbally, but I would like to say publicly, because a lot of people are the belief that some attorneys at law are only there for funds and whatever else they receive. But I want to commend those young attorneys and to encourage those who are now in the process. Serve your country with distinction because of the training you have and the opportunity extended because the public is looking up to attorneys and other professionals to guide and protect them. I also want, sir, to thank those numerous entities which submitted their reports, their queries, their concerns, and there were not just companies, but there were many individuals and groups that submitted, and therefore they joined us in helping us to get clarifications on the way that things were going and what we could do to be able to improve the standards that have fallen so far behind in a society when we boast of the free education. Our foreparents could teach us so many lessons, Mr. Speaker, and they had limited resources. Many of them only had the standpipe, but they made sure that the environs were cleaned. Many of them had the garbage that they disposed of, but they never put it alongside the road to make it look unsightly or to impact on others. Businesses also conformed, and there's no point in just giving so many millions of dollars into education and not trying to fulfill by training and reaching out and touching the lives not only of the children, but the adults. And therefore, I support highly community groups coming together, environmental groups to do the work. We know we have the Future Center Trust. We know that we have so many other entities for which I'm not going to have the time to call, but I want to highly commend them for their consistency in asking and inviting and encouraging Barbadians, keep this society clean and green. And of course, the Ministry of Environment, they too are trying their best to make sure that this society does it well. I want for our children in Barbados, Mr. Speaker, to be able to be exposed even more to keeping the environment clean. Barbadian schools, especially the primary schools, and I know of that better than any other, have been doing excellent work with the planting of trees and the cleaning of the environment and the drawings and the stories and the compositions and so, because that is the kind of foundation we need to extend to our children so that when they become adults, that they too know what to do, what to teach to their own families and others in the community, as well as the practices that they must uphold to be the upright Barbadian citizens that we know that they can be and will be.
I do have serious problems, sir, especially in the constituency that I have got the privilege to represent, where persons are deliberately, day in and the day out, morning and night, putting their garbage in those communities. My phone is so full, Mr. Speaker, with all the photographs and the videos. St. Thomas is known as the heart of Barbados. The wastewater, the rainwater, whatever we want to call it, it goes from St. Thomas to St. Andrew. St. Thomas to St. Michael is a massive area. Many constituencies in St. Michael. St. Thomas to St. Peter. St. Thomas to St. James. Till at times, when it rains in Barbados, the water goes into St. James and causes flooding. And people used to say to me, it's a pity that you don't know how to hold your water. Jokingly. Because it really has a serious impact, a deleterious impact, sir, especially in Whole Town, where sometimes there was just rain falling in St. Thomas and Whole Town got flooded. Not a drop of rain was in St. James. And I'm saying, in the same way that that will impact on others, even though there was no rain, then we understand when people are disposing of their garbage, how it will impact. And therefore, I highly commend the committee for its work, not because I was a member of the committee, but the kind of information, the kind of interaction, the entities that came and expressed themselves and the ideas that were put forward, and the governmental workers in the various institutions and how they explained how we can go forward in having this legislation put forward to be able to make the difference. I, sir, have had so many experiences. I do not even know if I should mention them, but I shall, because I want to encourage every community across Barbados to have an environmental group. There are limited ones. They have been doing excellent work. But we need now for the communities to be the eyes and the ears of where they are, in the villages, in the heights, wherever they are. Because there are people who are driving by and dropping their garbage in communities that are clean. And then others feel, well, look, it's those people in the heights that drop it there. No. There are persons who have been assigned by individuals who are moving the wood and the refuse, the garbage that they have, and paying the persons to take them to the mangrove landfill. And they drive right into rural Barbados most of the time. And they do it. And I had the experience, Mr. Speaker, sir. One Saturday morning when the Honourable Minister of the Environment had identified his workers to come with me because of my concerns with the illegal dumping in the parish. And a person was there with a truck, Mr. Speaker, with 12 mattresses, putting them off on Shop Hill. And I was sorry that the individual staff member who was in another vehicle ahead of me said something, because when I said to him, I've got your picture, and I'm going to report you to the police and to the ministry because you know that you have been paid by someone to move those 12 mattresses and you are putting them on Shop Hill Main Road on a bright Saturday morning when there was so much traffic. And when his officer asked him something, the man said, they were only shaking to fall off, and I got out to tie back the rope to put them back on. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I am so disturbed at the breaches of rules and regulations by Barbadians. It's not funny. People are driving in buses, not only the minibuses, but the government buses in their private cars. They're eating the food from the fast food places and throwing it out. And then we talk about flooding in gutters, because all of that sewage goes in with the tins, the bottles, whatever, and blocks the flow of the waste, water, and so on. That should not be. I want, sir, also to indicate, Mr. Speaker, sir, that I have a tremendous difficulty with the derelict vehicles on the road. I live in a road called the Vault Road, and I often used to say to my former member of parliament, who was the Chief Justice, sir, the people of the Vault Road, because there's a vault there, they are not dead. Everything seems to be happening in there. Now, Mr. Speaker, having written officially to the Ministry of Health previously to ask for the opportunity for persons who are repairing their vehicles on the highway, cars, motor cars, trucks, appliances, household appliances, like the washing machines and so. I was told by the person who was doing it, when they said, why are you still here with all this blocking the road? He said to me, a health inspector came and he told me, don't worry too much. Just shift it onto your own property. And now the road is blocked. There was a bad accident there. A young lady who was my immediate neighbor nearly lost her life, and the numbers have grown exponentially. Vault Road and Bridgefield in particular. I support a plan that I know this government under our leadership here would have put on board before for some warehouses that are now no longer operable when it comes to manufacturing and so on, for persons to get the opportunity. I know the project was started, but I believe that we are at a stage now in development where we should work towards getting those persons on board, that they can get the cars for repairs, the household appliances, with the furniture and the fridges and so on, and move them there, because at the end of the day, we know what can impact on us when it comes to diseases. Leptospirosis, dengue fever, and so on. Mr. Speaker, sir, I know that you visit that constituency in between. You're a very popular person, I must tell you up there. And you see, because Vaucluse Road is still impassable, and Vaucluse Road with the coconut shells, with the other appliances, and it is really taking a toll. I was mystified just a week ago when I passed by the entrepreneurial project that the Chinese are doing in Jukes. A massive mattress thrown on the open area right there. Other forms of appliances that you wouldn't really take up and move on your own. If I could get it lifted, I would put it in my car trunk and take it to the mangrove landfill. But it is not possible. Jack in the Box, that's one of the most popular roads now. All the remains from the chicken, 12 or so bags, a refrigerator, coconut shells. Jukes, that is a bridge that is a historic location. That bridge was built by slaves using the yolk and so on from eggs, and it is still firm, firmer than anything else that I've seen around the place in the line of a bridge. And all in that area, Christmas weekend, all the garbage if you come from Content. And I'm saying this aspect of the discussion and the legislation is extremely critical, not only for us in St. Thomas, but rural Barbados and urban Barbados as well. And I say, sir, we need to get back to basics. Because as little children in the school, we were taught that cleanliness is next to godliness. And unless the educational components are still offered, and I know schools do what they have to do most of the time, if not all of the time. But when it comes to the shops and the supermarkets and the different entities that are in businesses, they only have to collapse boxes in order to minimize what they are doing. So the educational aspect of it needs to be important. And I want the citizens of Barbados, I do not care what level they are at, whether they're ordinary society people, or they are middle class people, or the rich people, or whatever, every Barbadian to have eyes and ears and to be able to speak out and to report of the illegal dumping, because we do not want any more diseases. We have one hospital, Mr. Speaker, one hospital called the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, that every minute there is something happening. The hospital cannot carry it all. Why must persons be suffering from dengue fever? Because of others who have pride in their stomach are not fulfilling the rules and are conforming with the rules and the regulations of this country. I think it is wrong, and it needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. Vaucluse Road, I'm going to get back to that, because that is a road that I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, there were no less than 4 bodies, meaning human bodies, in there. They were dumped, Mr. Speaker. How do you kill someone and dump them in a gully or on a road alongside there as though they're an animal? You don't even dump your animals in that way. So the education, not only in the schools, not only in the government information service, but the university and the other churches and entities, because we must all come together as one country and look out for each other, because we never know when that mosquito will give us that bite. We never know when whatever the diseases will impact on us, and then all the pressure. There's only one government. There's only one hospital. There's only one people. But we need to collaborate with the education in our communities. And I agree that when you see something, say something. You don't have to say that the person hears you or gets to know it is you, because that's the other side that is happening now, where people want to destroy you because you saw something, you spoke about it. But say something, do something. I encourage communities, form some community groups and do some community cleanups. And the Ministry of Environment assists with the truck and the bobcat and so to be able to dispose of the derelict vehicles and so on that are found in our various communities. We don't want any rodents, we don't want any mosquitoes, we don't want anything destroying us. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am going to close because I know there are many other members who wish to speak, but I'm going to just not belaboring the point, but I just want to say the eyes and the ears must be there, so that when you see Christmas time comes, Easter time comes, Kaduma time comes, the collection of garbage is massive. And I know that the Ministry of Environment and Health are doing the best they can, and the new trucks and everything should make a difference. But there has to be more consistent collection of the refuse in order for us to be able to keep our environments clean. I also support, as I said earlier, children in the schools, primary, secondary, and the institutions, planting trees, doing environmental projects, doing their stories, they're creating their poems, creating coloring books and so on, because that sensitization helps a lot. In my day, sir, we could not sharpen a pencil and leave the sharpener ending anywhere. You would have been put in a firm position, and perhaps you might get a good thrashing too, because those are the days when children were flogged. And I'm not saying flog anybody, but make them write 100 lines. I must keep the environs clean. And sometimes that has a better impact than touching them, hitting them, whatever. And they then inculcate those habits as they go through life. It is a pitiful thing, Mr. Speaker, to see what Barbadians are doing right now. And I highly recommend to the government to continue to look for those warehouses, let those people go, do their work from there with their cars and the household appliances and any other form of garbage to be able to make the difference in Barbados. We are a country and we boast of our people, and we should, and we're inviting visitors here. If our economy is to continue to be built up, we have to conform with rules and regulations, and those who are breaching the laws must be punished, not only by paying funds, but once you hear a fella gets locked up for dumping. I'm not talking about the bodies now, because I would like something else to happen to them, but I know that people say I'm barbaric. But for dumping illegally, and they are seen, the photograph is there, the information is there, I would want them to be made public spectacles, that the rest of Barbados can see that is the punishment you will get if you do not conform with the rules and regulations, because you're putting other persons' lives and livelihoods at risk. And therefore, as a well-educated country, where billions of dollars over the last probably 50 years would have been instituted into our systems for health and education and the environment and so on, we need to get back to basics and make sure that we conform with the rules and the regulations at all times. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, the heart of Barbados, because I can only make the plea for St. Thomas in the way I do, the heart of Barbados must not be destroyed by persons coming from all over the country and dumping illegally. So we are forming our environmental group, and we are going to be the eyes and the ears beyond me and the other persons who will send me the photographs and so, because at the end of the day, we are one people, one nation, and the ideals should be spread across this entire island so that people know we must look out for our brothers and our sisters who are living on this little space and make sure that their lives and their welfare, their health, everything else is intact, because at the end of the day, once they fall ill, the taxes must be paid, the hospital must get the medication, the doctors and the nurses and other caregivers must be there to look after the clients, and therefore, if we are one people and one nation, we must adhere to rules. We must conform with everything that will make us a united people. We have done it before in times of poverty. We can do it now in times of plenty. And therefore, I encourage Barbadians, come together. Share your ideas, share your resources, look out for your brother, be your brother's keeper. The Bible tells us that. And once we come together as a people, we can soar to higher heights, and this will be a clean, peaceful environment where each one teaches one and looks after the needs of others. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for St. Michael North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to rise and to lend my voice to this debate today. I first, Mr. Speaker, would like to express my profound and continued gratitude to the good people of St. Michael North who have given me the opportunity to come up these steps and enter into these hallowed chambers and to speak on their behalf. It is not a responsibility that I take lightly, but it is one that I hold with great honor and gratitude and respect. I mention them, Mr. Speaker, sir, because just this past weekend, I had the opportunity to host another one of my cottage meetings in a small neighborhood within the constituency of St. Michael North, and I met with the residents there, and one of the core subject areas, discussion points, one could even say points of contention and concern, related to matters of the environment and public health. We discussed overgrown lots, we discussed mosquitoes, we discussed rodents, we discussed monkeys even. We discussed a whole host of things. The Honourable Member for St. Philip South is laughing. We discussed a wide range of things, a wide range of topics. And I must tell you, Mr. Speaker, that my constituents felt pleased to know that this chamber was going to be debating today the Health Services Act and the amendments thereto. They were pleased to know that this discussion and this type of debate was going to be taking place to improve their living conditions as it is proposed to do through these changes that are being made. So whilst I thank them for the opportunity to speak on their behalf, I must express my disappointment on their behalf as well, that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition would consider that this report and this debate is trifling and inconsequential. I must express my profound disappointment and dissatisfaction that the Leader of the Opposition would come into this serious place with serious debate on serious matters relative to public health and safety of our people and improving the public health and safety of our people, and seek to minimalize it, trivialize it, and reduce it with words like trifling and inconsequential. It is unfortunate that Hansard is not able to pick up sarcasm, as his speech was laced with sarcasm, sadly so. And whilst it was laced with sarcasm, it was devoid of substance. And this is not, this place to me is a serious place for serious discussion. And I would want to encourage my honourable friend to take these opportunities, I don't want to say he's not taking them seriously, take them more seriously and to elevate the level of debate and discourse. I want to thank the committee that was chaired by the Honourable Member for St. George North, all of the committee members. For their contribution. Ultimately, the report underscores that there's wide-ranging support for what we're seeking to do here with these amendments. The report underscores and emphasizes that the general public my constituents in St. Michael North, your constituents, Mr. Speaker, are satisfied that this administration is seeking to make progress relative to improving the way that our people interact one with the other. So I do not see this debate as being insignificant or inconsequential, but I actually see it as being very important because of the objectives and the aims that we're actually seeking to achieve. So I'm not going to focus on the committee, but I'm going to focus on the aims and the objectives thereof. I think the Honourable Attorney General, in leading off the debate, alluded to this, and I want to emphasize it, that one of the most important things that we can reflect on as we look at this report is the fact that it gave our people an opportunity to engage with us as legislators. We could have, Mr. Honourable Speaker, as we have always done, come into this place, have debates amongst the 30 of us, pass it from this house, send it to the upper house, pass it there amongst those individuals, send it off to Her Excellency, the President, and legislation came into being. We could have done that without any consultation, without any discussion, without inviting and engaging the people of Barbados in the exercise. But here you have an administration that from 2018 till now has sought to demonstrate a level of engagement and democracy that allows every citizen to know that they have a voice in our country and that their voice matters, even in matters that some may deem to be inconsequential and trifling and trivial. Because whilst it may be trivial to some, rats running around the place is important to others. Whilst it may be trivial and inconsequential to some, mosquito-borne illnesses is a matter of life and death to others. So let's not reduce a serious debate using sarcasm and words that will make people think that what we're doing in here and what the Goodly Committee did is not of any value or importance. So the first and most important thing to me, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that it gave the people of Barbados an opportunity to be a part of our discussion and our democracy. It allows our people, and it allowed in this instance, as has been the case with other bills, to go before a joint select committee so designated and designed and open those discussions to the members of the public so that they can weigh in and that they can deliberate and that they can add their voice and give their contributions. Because guess what, Mr. Honourable, Mr. Speaker, sir? All wisdom and all knowledge does not reside amongst these 30 individuals here. It certainly does not. So having the opportunity for the average citizen, and I mean, I was privileged, Mr. Speaker, to be called in and invited to the Joint Select Committee as one of the technical persons, myself and the Chief Environmental Health Officer, speaking on behalf of the Ministry of Health and Wellness relative to these environmental matters. And I was privileged to sit there, Mr. Speaker, and listen to the contributions from the same Bar Association. In fact, we have 3 oral presentations that day, and I was able to hear and benefit from hearing all 3 of them as they were presented. And it was an exercise that I thought was useful because they got to not only give their contributions, but we got to respond. And through that back and forth dialogue, there was a better understanding, an exchange of ideas that sharpened the focus of what we were trying to do. So I thought this exercise was useful, valuable, and contributed to what we want to do in our country, which is encourage democracy, encourage each person having a voice, and I want to encourage that even as we go forward and have more bills sent to Joint Select Committee, that the people of Barbados would respond in even more robust fashion than the contributions of some members of the committee. I would want to encourage the people of Barbados to respond in their gross numbers because I think that it gives you an opportunity. You don't have to sit at home or call the call-in programs and let that be the only avenue where your voice can be heard. We in the Parliament have given you an avenue through these exercises when we send bills to joint select committees that you get the chance to weigh in. You can write, you can come and do oral submissions and presentations. It is a fantastic exercise, so I think that there's tremendous value in that regard. So we received 6 written submissions and we received 3 oral presentations. And it could have been the case, Mr. Speaker, that we could have simply passed this legislation, not benefiting from those submissions, not making any tweaks or any adjustments. But coming out of the exercise, there were some amendments that were recommended. There were some recommendations made, yes, but there were also some amendments that were recommended to the proposed legislation. And I think, therefore, that we can applaud and appreciate that exercise at its core. Why else do I think, what are the other reasons that cause me to conclude that this is an important exercise? At its core, this bill reminds us, and this report points to a proposed amendment to bills, regulations, and an act that reminds us that we as citizens have a responsibility to take care of our environs. This land is our land. All of this space that we see around us and that we occupy in our residences and collective spaces and open collective areas, it all belongs to us. This is our rock. This is our home. There are no 2 Barbaduses on this place called the world. There's only one. And therefore, legislation like this and reports and exercises like what have been undertaken by the committee remind us of the responsibility of every citizen to take intentional care of our surroundings. The next thing that it reminds our people is that we have a responsibility as members of a civilization, one towards the other, Mr. Speaker. So it's not just that I have to take care of my environment because I want around me to be beautiful, but I need to take care of my environment because I don't want that I create a nuisance for those who live to my left, to my right, in front of me or behind me. So it helps to remind us that we are a part of an ecosystem. Mr. Honourable Leader of the Opposition. He wanted to hear certain words, sir. So I'm gonna oblige him. So we are part of an ecosystem. All of us have a part to play in maintaining this ecosystem to make sure that it is well balanced, orderly, organized. And if I don't do my part, it's going to affect the Honourable Member for St. Philip West, the Honourable Member for the City of Bridgetown. All of us have our part to play as members of a civilized society. So this act, this exercise that we're embarking on today and that which was done by the committee over the length of time that they were given is reminding us of that. And then ultimately, once the amendments to the Health Services Act and of course the consequential amendments that will come as a result of that to the regulations, the Health Services regulations, once that is done, then we will have the opportunity to also correct persons who run afoul of those 2 objectives, maintaining their own intentional control of their space and understanding that they also operate within a civilization. So therefore, administrative penalties will become a reality, and where persons run afoul of the law will have to therefore at some point in time pay those administrative penalties. And I'll say that the 4th thing to me that resonates as we discuss this report today is that it ultimately assists our public health officials in carrying out their mandate. Every single day, people go to work to ensure that the public health in Barbados is maintained at a very high standard and level. This is why, as a society, we have not had significant and serious public health emergencies, homegrown public health emergencies, over many decades. These hardworking men and women dedicate their lives to ensuring that every citizen in this country, all 267,000 of us plus, all of its visitors, are able to operate within a Barbados that is as safe as possible relative to public health concerns. But this is not always the case, because all across the world we have had so many different public health emergencies. I'm reminded, Mr. Speaker, of the Zika virus. And you know, as you get a little, as the Honourable Member for St. James Central says, you grow longer in the tooth. His teeth are longer than mine. But as you grow longer in the tooth, as you get older, as you lose some hair and some turns gray, not necessarily in that order, you realize some things and some realities about life. And it was just in about 2015, I think, and 16 that we had the Zika virus. I remember the hype and the concern that was abound in our country. Because, of course, we knew that the Zika virus was being transmitted by mosquitoes. And there was the concern, especially as it relates to expecting mothers and the unborn children. I remember it well. But it's now 10 years ago. It seems like it was yesterday, but it was just really 10 years ago. And it affected thousands of people. I remember as well, not only Zika, but I remember chikungunya, which was long before that, but I remember it well. And there are people in Barbados today in 2025, Mr. Speaker, who are still feeling the effects of chikungunya in their bodies, in their joints. It is amazing. And it is caused by a mosquito. In fact, Mr. Honourable Speaker, there are more deaths caused to human beings by mosquitoes than any other cause known to man. Mosquitoes have taken out more human beings than the guns, than the bombs, than the whatever else. This is how serious the debate is. So whilst it is not pretty or sexy to some, it is still important. We must still discuss it, and we must still make the steps that we are making now and taking these decisions to help our people to understand that they have a role and a responsibility to ensure that we can reduce the habitats which encourage the proliferation of vectors like the same mosquitoes. Because guess what, Mr. Speaker? I can't train a mosquito. You can't train mosquitoes, you know. You can't train well, you can train some rodents. You can train some, but not all. Some are untrainable. Some disorderly. But mosquitoes, if I bring them in at me, I can't train them to stay in at me. They will go by my neighbor and they may make my neighbor sick. And if my neighbor does the same thing, irresponsibly so, unconscionably so, the mosquitoes may come and eat me. Not eat, bite. And inflict their mosquito-borne illnesses into my body. So this is why it is important for each of us to understand the importance of discussions like this. Because mosquito-borne illnesses take out people every single day. Move on from that now, leptospirosis. Still very prevalent in our country. Just because we don't hear about massive numbers of people coming down with the illnesses, it doesn't mean that it's not there. It is still there. Rats are still causing problems across our island. And mice as well. Let me just put all them together. So we need to ensure that we can reduce vectors, reduce vermin, reduce their environments in which they proliferate. And if it comes down to a piece of legislation saying that your grass can be no more than 2 feet tall, then I support that, Mr. Speaker. I support it. I support it wholeheartedly because at the end of the day, all of us are in this together. And I cannot stop the mosquitoes from going elsewhere. They will come and they will bite and they may make me sick too. So I have my own responsibility. So ultimately, sir, this bill supports the objective of reducing the numbers of diseases that are caused by vectors. I want to share quickly, sir, that there are some costs associated with this same bill and this same report. There are some costs associated with maintaining our public health. Our environmental health department and its various agencies thereunder, in the financial year 2024 to 2025, were allotted just over $5 million Barbados dollars to help us in our fight to maintain public health. $5 million Barbados dollars. The honorable member for St. James South, like myself, came from the business world, trainer, business manager, consultant, etc. And I know that a penny saved is a penny earned. I also know that in business you have to manage priorities, and you always have competing interests and competing priorities relative to your spending. So in my mind, Mr. Honorable Speaker, if we can get every citizen to take better, accountable, intentional responsibility for their environment, and we can reduce the vermin and the vectors, then the money that we're spending, over $1.6 million of that $5 million that went to us last year was just for vector control unit alone. $1.6 million went to the vector control for baiting, for all these different things, for building bait stations, etc. $1.6 million. Now that $1.6 million can be better placed, I believe, in the hands of our young entrepreneurs in the trust fund to enable some young man or some young woman with a business idea to be able to grow their business and employ 2 or 3 others from their community and lift them up out of their circumstances. That can be a better use of the deployment of our limited resources. But unfortunately, we're spending $5 million and projected even in this new fiscal to spend more, once approved by the Parliament. $5 million in approved estimates last year towards environmental health matters. 1.6 alone towards vector control, to take care of rats and mosquitoes. No, in that order. In that order. But it's important, sir, that we take care of them. We have to take care of them. Because if we don't take care of them, then the public health risk continues. And our people can get sick and grossly sick at that. From Christ, everywhere, everywhere. All parts of this island. There are rats all over. There are rats all over. And we need to take care of them. Wherever they rear their heads, we need to take care of them.
I would hate to think, Honourable, that people are becoming offended because of the term you're using.
They can't be, sir. No.
Because they know you're using it. I hear the word in plural.
I'm good.
I don't think that's the ought to be a problem.
Exactly. I'll be guided by you if I said anything unparliamentary.
Some people, yes, but I see people on this side laughing and some people on that side laughing.
Maybe they're just laughing at me. Maybe they're just laughing at me.
On this side or on that side?
On that side, on both sides. They're probably just laughing at me, Mr. Speaker. So I'm wrapping up. I'm coming down. So anyway, so I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, sir, that in a space of scarce resources, where we only have X amount of dollars, but so many different priorities and needs, I would rather for that money that we're spending towards baiting and fogging, etc., I would rather that it be deployed in more productive sectors, areas that can really bring our economy up in terms of our GDP, and that can empower our citizens at the very grassroots of levels. That's my personal vision, and that's the way that I would like it to be approached. But for now, this is where we're spending our money, because it is that serious of a matter that we have to spend and allocate these resources to it on a yearly basis. And there's not only the financial cost that is associated with environmental health and public health, which this bill and this report speak to, but there's also the environmental costs. As we increase Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central, the use of pesticides and insecticides, etc., there's a knock-on deleterious effect and impact on the insects that we don't want to harm, whether that be bees. It affects negatively our biodiversity. So we need to get it, we need, Mr. Speaker, to wrestle this to the ground and reduce the areas and the spaces where these vectors can expand and explode. Because as we do that, then there will be a less significant need and demand for us to use potentially harmful insecticides and pesticides relative to our other insects. So there's not only the financial cost, but there's also environmental cost and impact as well. Ultimately, Mr. Speaker, as I wind up, I just want to speak to the people of Barbados now. As I spoke to my people in St. Michael North over the weekend, and I will continue to do so as I have my regular cottage meetings with them, etc., I encourage them. Let us reduce the derelict vehicles. Let us maintain and look at the derelict houses. But I say to the people of Barbados, every derelict house is a potential revenue source. If you have a house that has been there languishing unfinished, or that is in some way, shape, or form damaged and open to the elements, spend some money, invest some capital in getting the space back to a livable and habitable level, so that you can then rent it out as an Airbnb. Or you can give it to some person who's right now looking for a home, some mother and her children that are about the place looking. to have so many constituents that are coming to me on a regular basis looking for housing. And I am all over the place, not only looking in public for housing, but I'm looking in the private sphere for housing, and it is very difficult. But yet you have so many derelict houses that are just laying fallow, vines growing all through them, etc. So I encourage the people of Barbados, if you know you have a property that is just laying there wasting away, get some capital, invest in the upkeep of the space, build it back to what it should be, and if you don't want to live in it personally, get some rental income from it. Give it to somebody else and make some money off it on a monthly basis. This is our beloved nation, sir. As I started out by saying, I will end. We live together and we must be civilized. And interestingly enough, as I was reviewing some quotes recently relative to public health, I came across an online resource, and it gave about the top 25 quotes for public health in recent memory. Some of these quotes date back to the 1970s. Some of the greatest thought leaders relative to public health, not only ministers in government, but advocates across the last several generations. And would you believe, Mr. Honourable Speaker, that on that list of top 25 quotes, I came across a quote by former Prime Minister, late Professor Owen Seymour Arthur. He has a quote on that top 25 list. And the quote is as follows: "He who has health has hope, and he who has hope has everything." Our former Prime Minister, Professor the late Owen Arthur, he who has health has hope, and he who has hope has everything. I encourage the people of Barbados, including the members of this honorable house, to take our health, public health, our individual physical health, our mental health, our emotional health, our environmental health. Take it seriously, because if you have your health, you have hope. And if you have hope, you have everything. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged to.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 2:25 p.m.
The question is that this honorable chamber be suspended until 2:25 p.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands suspended until 2:25 p.m.